to me.
Well, I don't know if we heard any rumors about. I never heard any rumors about him coming to you for free stuff.
And he paid for everything.
Did he?
Yeah. See, so that's. But he did.
Hello and welcome to Sports Opinion, the weekly sports talk show on PATV, that's Public Access Television, Channel 18. I'm Dirk Keller. Bud Supple, welcome back from Florida. It's like forever since we've seen you, but glad to see you again.
Glad to be back.
Earl Murphy's always here, and we're happy about that. And we've got a very special guest today. The Iowa City Press-Citizen writer, columnist, reporter, Pat Harty is here. We've been trying to get Pat on the show for a long time, and he's finally here. He's been very busy with football, spring football. Every Wednesday when we record the show, the Hawkeye football team had their weekly news conference, so we couldn't get you. Yeah.
We didn't used to do that in spring, but we had a lot more access this year.
Yeah, well, that's great. And it's great to have you here. We got a number of things we're going to talk about, primarily Hawkeye football and basketball recruiting. You had a nice article in the paper today about some of the targets for recruiting in both sports. And we also want to talk about spring football, the Hawkeye spring football period that just ended last week with the spring game. You were at the game.
I was.
And then I thought we'd start off by talking, we're also going to talk about Steve a little bit. Pat had some personal experiences, to say the least, as did some members of his family. We're going to discuss that. And at first, though, I thought we would just maybe do a little introduction and ask you to tell us and the viewers a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you came to Iowa City and the Press-Citizen.
Well, I grew up in Des Moines, went to West Des Moines Dowling Catholic High School. I don't think we called it Catholic back then.
Yeah.
They've added that since I left. And
After you got out of there.
They did the say school. Now it's, yeah.
when I was there, they couldn't use the word Catholic. I don't know.
I know.
Graduated
Regina,
from
they
Drake in
just
80s.
changed, too.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of
Catholic
Catholic schools are doing that. Yep.
Yeah,
I
all of
guess
us.
we did. I don't go to church every Sunday as much as I should, but I still try to. But graduated from Drake in 87. Started in newspapers. I got a job up at a tiny paper, the Northwest Iowa Review, up in Shildon, Iowa, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Really?
Started there, wasn't ready to start working full-time yet, moved to Florida for a year, and could have done that for the rest of my life.
In Florida?
Bartended.
Really?
Could have done that for the rest of my life, but my family started saying we didn't send you to college to go down to Florida and bartend, so I went and came back here, started working at the Register, then came up here in 92.
You started at the Register?
I started working there part-time right out of college in 87, 88. Was working for my family in Des Moines for a while, too. We have a tuxedo business. Can I plug it?
Yeah.
Skevinden's Formal Wear for anyone who needs.
I didn't know this. That's the connection with...
My brother's wife's family. Now my brother's wife and her sister are the owners of it. Yeah, they've stationed out of Des Moines, and I worked for them, and I actually worked for them a lot part-time. Well, John from my...
John Feeney.
He manages our store up at the mall.
Now, is he related to you through
No,
marriage
he's not
or
related.
something?
No, not related, just a friend, and he started working there, about 13 years ago, and he's been working there ever since, doing a great job. And I did that some, and then I came up here and started working. I've been here over 20 years now at the Press-Citizen.
Wow.
First year I covered not much Iowa stuff, did more preps and women's stuff, and then got into the Iowa beat. And didn't think I'd be here that long. I honestly thought I'd be here maybe 5-10 years, but now never thought the newspaper industry would be where it is today right now. Now you're just hanging on wherever you are.
What did you study at Drake?
Journalism.
You did.
I couldn't do math, so I had to find a major where there was no... I could actually get a journalism degree at Drake without having to take a math class. Couldn't have done that at Iowa.
Yep.
I could not do math. I just was not very good at math. I liked writing, liked sports, liked music, A lot easier way to make a living in sports than there was in music. A lot more jobs, but love music as in sports.
And so when you were a kid, did you grow up a Hawkeye fan?
Oh yeah, my brother actually played football here.
Yeah.
Not John Hardy, Frank Hardy. He was
Right.
a year behind John. He was actually in Bob Cummings' last. He may have been Bob Cummings' last scholarship recruit. You know how at the end of recruiting classes they always have a couple
Yeah.
in-state guys they fall back on, like a Mike Elgin,
Yeah.
Brandon Myers. My brother was one of those. He got one of their last ins. He was probably going to go to the Air Force Academy. Then Cummings gave him a scholarship. He was part of that '78 with Bobby Stoops, and he was pushing for playing time as a redshirt freshman in spring. Then he had a bone chip and staph infection and never played football again.
Almost lost his leg,
Almost
didn't he?
lost his leg. I mean, almost lost his life. I mean, he lost 100 pounds. It was dismal. And he's getting ready now at the age of 53, facing full knee replacement surgery. His back's it's been a long grind for him. But he graduated in 3 years from Iowa, went to law school.
3 years?
Yeah, once he took a whole semester from his hospital bed. And I wrote that column about John Streif. He could stuff without John Streif.
Let's talk about that part of your brother's life here and experience at Iowa.
John Streif he was like a guardian angel. My brother was up here, spent the whole, was it the fall of '79 first semester pretty much in the hospital, just fighting this staph infection. His knee looked like it had a plate in it. It got so infected. And he went from weighing about 250 to about 150. And John Streif was just there for him all the time. And I remember thinking, I'm like, my brother's never played a down for this team.
Yeah.
And he treats Andre Tippett.
Yeah.
I just remember it, and it just
Not the
always
truth.
stuck with it. And he's just always been there for my family in so many ways. What I've always liked about John is there's been times where I've written some negative stuff about Iowa because it's my job, but John has always been able to departmentalize everything. He never took it personally, and he never held a grudge against me. And he's almost too good to be true. And he really helped my brother get through a rough time.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Great
kind of
man.
the guy John Streif
Oh,
is.
I
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a great man.
John took care of all the kids
Oh, he's
around
amazing.
here. Oh, no,
I think
no.
he's what we all aspire to be like, but we all come up short in some. I know I do.
Somewhat saintly.
Yes, he
is
really
how
is.
I would categorize
He's almost
John.
too good to be true, and I just hope he has a.
He's not even Catholic, is he?
Yes,
don't-
he is.
Oh, he is?
I just hope he has a
Why can't
long,
he be a saint?
enjoyable
He's
retirement.
not Catholic. He's Episcopalian.
That's what I
He's
thought.
okay.
About as close as you can
yeah.
get.
That's right. So he's not eligible for sainthood, but in our book.
He's a saint in my
Yeah.
family's book.
So
Yeah, I was at the games, and I was sitting in the box seats.
upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs.
Yeah.
And Louise and I were just sort of by ourselves. And here comes John. And he sits down for a while, just.
He seems, when I see him now, to be
Relaxed.
very happy and relaxed, like Pat said.
Yes.
And I think that's been really good for him.
And I thought he was going to be uncomfortable with all the attention, but I actually think he likes it a little
Oh,
bit.
yes.
I mean, he's human. He's got elation a little bit.
We
He
had him at
deserves
our
it.
lunch a week or two ago.
Yeah.
And we would have never gotten him there if he hadn't been retired.
Exactly.
That's right.
And he looked like he was just loving it. He was just one of the guys singing all the old songs. And
You'll see another side of him now, I think.
I hope so.
That's right.
We're going to get him back on the show.
And he'll do it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's a member now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great man. That's what my mom said about him 30 years ago, and what she said about him when I wrote that column. He's just a great man.
That's neat. Now, somebody else we agree, man, Al Grady. Did you work with Al?
Never had a chance.
You didn't work with him.
I never worked with Al. He was at the Press Citizen from like in the 40s to 87. I didn't get up here till 5 years after Al left.
Oh,
Yeah, because pretty much when Gannett took the paper over, isn't that when his run kind of ended?
I think so.
From what I remember,
remember?
when I came here, it was still somewhat of a sensitive topic. I mean,
Oh,
after
it was-
Gannett took over the paper, it seems like they parted ways with Al, or he
Mm-hmm.
parted ways. I didn't know. Al never held that against me. He was great.
wouldn't.
Al was my reference source for everything. And then when he passed away, it was George Wine.
Yep, and now
then
he's gone.
Now George Wine's gone, and that's the one I still have trouble reminding myself.
Should he go to Phil Hattie now?
I can go to Phil. Phil's not as much into facts. He's more into humor than those two guys are. I'd go to Phil for a joke more than I would facts.
That's right.
Ah! Well, we've had Phil and George on the show as well. In fact, George is on the show just before he died.
It's just I just still haven't once in a while have to remind myself that he's not around.
Same here. I came across his name in something the other day, and I thought, I got to give him a call.
And then you realize I've done that a couple times.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
He's gone.
So sudden.
Oh, man. That was really sad. So I guess, yeah, had you'd met Al and talked with him?
I just met Al once I moved up here.
That was it?
And I'd never met him. I'd heard about him, but I'd never really met him before.
So you never went to him? I thought you...
Oh, I went to Al all the time.
Okay, so you
as a
talked to him on
reference.
the phone.
Yeah, I interviewed him a lot, but I had never met him.
I got it.
He had nothing
I
to do
got
with
it.
the Press Citizen when I got
Oh,
there.
no. He was
But
voice of the Hawkeyes.
But yeah, he was voice, but I went to him lots of times as a reference point, and he was always great.
Oh, wow.
He was fun to tease, too, and he'd tease me back.
Yeah.
And we gave him some crap up in the press box some, and he'd dish it out, too. He was
Good.
Al had a sense of humor.
Good.
And I think the one thing about Al that's kind of a misperception, he was a homer, but he would criticize. I mean, I get people saying, well, you got to be more like Al Grady. He never.
Oh, no.
Al criticized. I read his stuff. He criticized the Hawks a lot. He just did it maybe in a more tactful manner than I did. I'll admit that. But no, Al was,
I think we have an admission here.
towards the end of his career, I thought he was a lot more, I don't want to say objective, but he was critical at times. He'd get frustrated.
I'm trying to think when you said 87 was the last?
87 was when he was
That's
done.
when he left?
I believe that's when he left the Press Citizen.
Gosh, Hayden
20
was roaring then.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. Tom Davis didn't come till 88,
86,
89,
87.
86, 87.
He was there for Tom Davis's first season. So yeah, he left the Press Citizen at a great time for Iowa sports.
Yep, he did. Well, and you know that Al was the moderator of Sports Opinion
Yes, I
from
do.
day one.
Well, you know, Al and I have one thing in common. Didn't his father play football?
Kelowna.
Didn't his father play football at Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
So did my father.
And
And I believe his father on scholarship at Notre Dame?
I know Rodney signed him.
Okay, because
Yeah.
that's one thing Al and I have in common. His father and my father are believed to be one of the first two from the state of Iowa
Really?
to get full ride football scholarship. And my dad got one back in '44.
and Mike Gayton's dad.
Mike Gayton's, but was he on scholarship? I don't know if he's on scholarship. I don't know.
No, I don't think he was.
But my dad was like, my dad could never have gone to Notre Dame without a football scholarship. He was
Yeah.
dirt poor
He
growing
got a
up.
letter.
But yeah, he played running back in the. He
Really?
liked Iowa too. My dad loved Iowa, but when Notre Dame offers you a full ride, we're a very Catholic family. He went
Yeah.
there, and unfortunately, his career was met with a knee injury too.
Really?
He blew his knee out, and back then, when you blew your knee out, you were done.
Yeah, that was it.
Then he wrestled at Notre Dame after that.
Really?
So yeah, I grew up in Iowa and a Notre Dame fan.
Now, you played sports in high school.
I did
What'd you play?
basketball, football, and baseball.
No wrestling?
No wrestling, no football. Baseball and basketball were probably my two best. Baseball was probably what I was best at. I probably liked basketball more. I was a pitcher in baseball, and sometimes I got bored with baseball.
Yeah.
But Dowling, we were real good. I mean, Dowling's always real good.
Oh.
I mean, it's a very competitive school and what have you. But then I tried to play for a semester of basketball at Drake. I tried to walk on, but not a big market for 11 point guards. But I tried it, but
Yeah,
I
you
played
gave it a shot.
played a lot of basketball and what have you. But yeah, and then when I came up here, I got into mountain biking. I tried to go over to the Bill Center, that's a Drake. Tried to go over to the field house to play in the noon league a few times when I moved up here. And with my job and going over there, it wasn't a good mix.
Yeah.
Went over there a few times and just, I don't know, it just kind of was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I quit doing. Plus, I could never get on one of the good teams with Randy Larson, so I could never stay on the court. It's hard to beat Randy and guys, so I never got a chance to stay on the court. But yeah, I was really into basketball until I got up here, and then mountain biking. Now I don't do much of anything, unfortunately.
You're right.
Yeah, right.
You read a lot.
That doesn't burn a lot of calories, though.
No.
I got my dogs. I walk my dogs.
Are we through with Steve Alford?
No,
We haven't
we haven't even
started.
begun. But we were about to. About a month ago, you
Is that how
came
long it's
out.
been?
It's at
I think
least
it's
a
been
month.
about a month. You're right.
Was it before spring break or after?
It was.
It was after spring break.
Yeah, it was right about early March, early April.
Well, Pat here wrote a really personal column about Steve Alford and Pierre Pierce. It was right after Steve Alford had been announced as the new head basketball coach for the men's program at UCLA. Obviously a coveted position for any basketball coach in the college ranks. And I know that Pat and I met for lunch one day right after that
I don't think it had came out.
introduction. Well, the intro had.
Yeah, the intro had.
And we were just, Pat and I were just talking, and I think we said a few things that pretty much everybody said. When Steve Alford was interviewed at his introductory press conference, the second question from one of the LA reporters
Orange
was,
County Register.
yes, was, would John Wooden have handled the Pierre Pierce incident the same way you did? And instead of saying, younger, less experience. I didn't do the best I should have. He denied all responsibility and tried to point the finger at the University of Iowa's administration. And that drew a lot of uproar. And so Pat and I were just talking about it that day. And it was 2 days after that. It was Friday night. I remember because I got home Friday night, and there it was online, this story that you had written. You
And when
didn't
I saw
say,
you 2 days earlier, I still hadn't
Yeah.
decided if I was.
Okay. So I'll just preface the story. If you haven't heard about it, Pat's brother, who played football at Iowa, had a daughter who was a freshman at Iowa. And I'm going to let you tell the rest of the story as it relates to Pierre Pierce. And
Okay, well, what happened for me is I got a call from my brother. This would have been in September of 2002, I believe the third weekend, 2 weeks or 1 week after the Miami of Ohio game, which that notorious incident happened that weekend
when Pierre Pierce was charged
with sexual assault.
sexual assault.
I got a call from my brother who was just outraged. I mean, he was on his way up here, basically telling me that he was going to look for him. And I said, you got to settle down. I just calmed him down. I'm like, let me make a phone call. So I called Sports Information, and in fairness, the person from Sports Information did what I asked. He contacted the coaches. I know he did because I received a letter from Greg Lansing. And in fairness, Greg tried to reach out to me, and basically I told them that my had met Pierre just by chance on campus, just one of those first weeks. You know, kids are just kind of everywhere. Met, and then about 2 weeks later, my niece is in her dorm folding laundry, and boom, he shows up. And
In her room.
In her room, and they talked for a minute, and she basically said, okay, you're going to have to leave, and wouldn't leave, shut the door, and then she basically just screamed, and crowded, bustling dorm floor, roommates and what have you. I think he realized, thought better against it, and left, thank God. But to me, knowing that happened about 2 weeks after the and all that stuff was floating around in the air, to me, it threw a red flag, so I just expected to get something back. Actually, I didn't expect to hear back from the university. I figured I'd get a call from my brother saying,
brother,
hey, wow,
yeah.
Alfred just reached out to me. They're looking into this Pierre stuff. Never happened. Other than the letter from Greg, which basically said he was sorry that some type of incident may have occurred, but yeah, I needed to understand that Pierre was an outstanding, great young man, and that's what the gist of this letter was, and that he hoped that, you know, he and my niece could work things out or whatever, and it just, from that,
You knew.
I just knew then what was going on. I kind of knew then what we were dealing with, and like I said in my column, it was hard for me to stay objective after that, so I just got off the beat. I mean, I would write a column every now and then. I wrote positive columns too. It just seemed like, though, when the Alfred stuff was really rolling, I could write 10 positive things, but if I wrote one negative thing, that just erased all the positive, and I was considered a hater and what have you. And one of the weird things about that whole thing was Alfred considered me a Hawkeye. And I grew up in the state and had a brother who almost lost his leg playing football here. And I guarantee you, until he got hired at Iowa, he couldn't stand Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
That's what just kind of, the whole thing bugged me. But I had that letter for years, too. I can't find it now. I know I still have it somewhere.
From Greg Lansing.
From Greg.
Who's now the Indiana State men's basketball
Yes.
head coach.
And
Who
I
was
want
just here.
to, I want to emphasize, he did try to do something. And there's no way. And then I know for a fact that Steve's been approached and told about my, I don't want to call it an accusation or whatever. He denied it, said it never happened. He actually said in a story that I think is going to be coming out that he thinks maybe my brother and my niece and I just kind of made it up, which...
We're talking Alfred or Pierre Pierce?
Alfred. Well, Pierre said the same thing.
Pierce denied it.
He denied the charge and what have you, which I would expect him to do.
Yeah.
You know, but I've been told that Alfred denied it and says he doesn't think that the incident even happened, and that it was basically me just trying to bring attention, and why I would drag my niece and brother into something. To me, the fact that I prevented my brother from driving up here, because that would not have been a good situation.
Yeah.
You know, that would not have been a good situation, because he would have came up here looking for him.
He would have taken Pierre Pierce
and it
out.
would not have been a good situation.
And what father wouldn't want to do that when you learn that a predator, and that's really, I think the timeline here is important. It was 2 weeks after
Roughly 2 weeks after the September 7th.
Pierre had been charged with sexual assault of another student. And here you get more signs that not only is this probably, you know, a guilty, you know, he's guilty of what he was charged. He's a predator.
And I put in the column, there was no charge. People are like, well, you could have got him for kidnapping. No, I mean, he didn't kidnap her. He just scared her.
Yeah.
And that's all I said. I wasn't looking for Iowa to go press charges or anything. I just thought that if Alfred would have just taken the time to find out who my brother was, what his connection was, I mean.
And who Pierre Pierce was.
Who Pierre Pierce was, and done something but just nothing. They just swept it under the rug, and it made me think they really do want to keep this kid on the team. Because let's face it, he was a good player.
Oh.
He was since I've been here. Kid had a lot of talent. Unfortunately,
Really did.
he just had issues. Hopefully, he's turned his life around. It sounds like maybe he has.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
It sounds like he was given a lot of opportunities that other people wouldn't have.
He was Pierce was interviewed recently after
Chicago
after Pat's article came out.
Oh, okay.
He was interviewed. He's playing basketball in Europe, but he's injured currently with a bum shoulder. So he was home in Chicago.
Got a baby son, I believe.
Baby boy. They had a picture of him in this article with the baby boy resting his
Little
chest.
baby, and he basically denied everything and wished me well.
Yeah.
And what have you, but it just, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I figured he would do. And I'll tell you, my niece has moved on. And it was not her idea for me to write. This thing just kind of popped up at the end. My brother was sort of reluctant at first, but then we're like, people need to know what this guy's about. Plus, I've always kind of had this thing hanging over my head here in Iowa City, because there was a while during the Alford time where I was considered an extreme Hawkeye hater. And that was always, it just kind of got to me a little bit.
Bet.
I like the Hawks. I mean, I've got a job to be objective as a columnist. If they struggle in areas, I'll point that out. But Iowa and Notre Dame are my two favorite college teams, and that will never change.
Well,
I know that's not a good combination up here in Iowa City, but I'm probably one of the few people here that likes Iowa and Notre Dame both.
I grew up the same way you
I
did.
think there's a lot of.
Are there more?
Oh, yeah.
We watched the
I think everyone in my family but me.
Yeah.
Me.
I don't think Evie liked Notre Dame.
No, and he shouldn't have.
No.
There are a lot of Iowa fans who have good reason.
I with Iowa on that one. Notre Dame is
Absolutely.
not beyond criticism.
Absolutely.
But no, the Alford thing was just really unfortunate. And if he would have just answered that initial question the way he did with the apology, I wouldn't have thought about that. The LA Times wouldn't have come out here and spent a week investigating him. They would have shown that he had moved on, but he's incapable of doing that.
Yeah.
That apology was so manufactured by other people, it was. But
Sure was.
But we'll see. I mean, he's going to have probably 3 years to get it done out there, and if it doesn't,
Well, he's in the news today because he is disagreeing with his former employer at the University of New Mexico over the $1 million buyout clause in his contract with them. And it's a lot of semantics and
Steve.
yeah. Steve says I only owe them, what is it, 200,000?
200, and they want the whole million because they say that he needed to give them 30 days notice.
Right.
If you factor in the 30 days notice, then it does fall into that. It's kind of ironic because my brother's a labor lawyer.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that he would be great at stuff like that, but I doubt that he would probably represent.
You don't
Steve.
think defend
I doubt he
Steve?
would probably defend, but that is what my brother does, and I've been told by a lot of people that he's really good at it too, as a labor lawyer.
Have you talked to your brother about the position Alford has
No.
taken?
No, not really. No, I've not talked about that. The one thing I did talk to my brother about, and I said, could they fire him before he ever coaches in the game? He goes,
Oh,
yeah, they
sure.
could. He goes, they're going to owe him money. He goes, they won't be able to get out of that money. He goes, he signed a contract. They'll owe him money.
Yeah.
So, but he'll survive this. He
We'll
may not.
see.
He may not survive UCLA's heritage,
Right.
and their expectations, but he'll survive this. He's a PR person and just know when to talk and when to shut up.
No kidding. Now, one of the things that you told us before we started the show is that shortly after your column came out about this incident with your niece and Pierre Pierce, you were contacted by an LA Times reporter, investigative reporter.
Well, they're a UCLA beat writer.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
came out here.
He was here for how long?
Well, Sunday through Wednesday, I believe.
Oh.
Interviewed a lot of people in town. Not a hatchet job. He interviewed
Right.
a lot of people. I went out of my way to give him people that I knew. Mike Gatens is a big Steve Alford supporter.
Yep.
And Mike Gatens has reason to be a big Steve. He's done nothing but good things for his family. Offered his kid a scholarship in 9th grade. And so, yeah, he didn't want to just have it. He wanted the full polarizing Steve Alford. And that story's not out yet. It should be coming out here in the next couple of days.
Well, we'll look for that. Do you think the Press Citizen might run that?
Well, we're trying to. I'm waiting to hear back from the reporter and to see. We'd like to run it. We'd like to get their permission to run it that afternoon after it runs in their facility. But yeah, we're definitely trying to get that in our paper.
Well, like you said, he interviewed a lot of local people, both on and off the record, and it's going to be real interesting. This LA Times.
Chris Foster's his name. He's
Chris
a reporter
Foster?
for the LA Times. Yeah, he's about almost 60 years old. He's been doing it a long time. He knows what he's doing. And see, that's the difference Steve's going to find out. I mean, Iowa media, we're pretty soft in the big scheme of things.
No kidding.
LA, I mean, the way they phrased that question, that second question. They were just looking for a confrontation. I mean,
Right out of the gate.
We would have asked it maybe at some point, but we would have been different about it. We would have been a lot more, they don't care. I mean, that guy who asked him the question has been doing this for years. He's older than Steve. He doesn't care. And
Was it the same guy?
No, this was Scott Reed. From the
Okay,
Orange
yeah,
County
I
Legislature
remember
asked
that
the question.
name. Well, it's I still think there's more to be learned.
Well, I did get some emails from people who are relatives of daughters who claim to have had similar incidents. One was very scary, where she basically ran to the dorm that she lived in. My niece lived in Hillcrest. That was a little different. This girl lived in a different dorm to where she had access to lock it after 11 o'clock. She barely got the door shut and kept him from getting in, and he sat there and pounded on the door. This is the account I got from Mr. I got 2 or 3 of those saying.
I read a story, and I related it here on the show at the time after you wrote your article, but there was at the same time, your niece and the other women, at the very same time, he met a girl, Pierre Pierce met a girl downtown and wanted her phone number.
I've heard these stories.
And he said, let me give you mine.
Something about getting her number into his phone.
Right.
Yeah.
He said, I'll give you my number. I'll put it in your cell phone. And so instead, what he did was he dialed his cell phone from her
And then he saw the
phone.
number.
So he's got her phone number. She didn't want to give him her phone number. And so he said, all right, how about I give you mine? And then instead, now he's got her number in his phone. And what he did was he went up and down the floor of the dorm, calling that number repeatedly until he finally heard it ring. And he went after her.
That's determination, isn't it?
Now, all this stuff
That's disturbing
It's
determination.
stalking. It's
stalking.
predatory.
Yeah,
all
it's-
this stuff I'm hearing, does the university police have this or anyone?
I don't know, but is that a crime?
Doubt it.
Is it a crime? I mean, what happened to
No.
my niece isn't a crime.
In his case, it could be.
That could have been, how would that have been a crime?
Well, on the first case,
But like with my niece's situation, that wasn't a crime, was it?
no, that wasn't a crime.
I mean, just 'cause you shut-
tell 'em, but if you're getting my telephone
Oh, okay,
away
that's
that I
different.
don't
You're right.
know, that'd be a crime.
Yeah.
Would it?
Because just shutting the door to me doesn't qualify as kidnapping. I mean, he
No,
didn't-
yours wouldn't be
no.
at all.
No, I made.
Be a policeman.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm asking him.
Yeah, yours wouldn't be at all.
That's why we didn't.
No,
We didn't. We just wanted Iowa to know what they had there,
Yeah.
but
and
if
they
you could
knew.
prove that he got her phone to get her phone.
Well, it's been 10 years, or how many years has it been?
Wow, it's been 11.
No, but
11
to me, some law enforcement would do something. They don't want a guy like that around.
No,
Hopefully,
Is he married now?
I'm not sure.
Must
if
he
he's-
has a baby. Well, I don't
know
know.
if they're married. I think he's with the mother though. I'm not sure
Yeah,
if they're married.
I think
they're
that's
with-
the case.
I think she's from Iowa.
Yeah.
She went to Iowa, I believe, from what I've heard.
you know, the shame of all this is Pierce grew up in a loving household
he
with
did.
parents who were educators.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He went to West. He's from Westmont. It's not like he's from
Yeah.
the rough inner city. I
He
mean,
had a
lot of
good
opportunities.
upbringing,
and was a good player.
he was a good player.
When he was playing well and hitting threes, and he was as good as anybody they had.
Yeah, he was smooth.
Just had some issues.
Big issues. And I'm glad he's gone. And I am glad that you were willing to share that with us today. There may be a lot of viewers who haven't had a chance to see your article or hear the complete story or the details. Look for that column in the LA Times.
It's
coming
going to be
up.
a news story.
Okay.
It's going to be a detailed, very long news story.
sounds
It won't
good,
have
though.
it won't have opinion in it.
If someone like that is on to it,
Yeah.
he's not going to come out to Iowa and start lying about something.
No, and he wasn't,
don't
and he
have-
didn't want it to just be a hatchet job either.
No,
He
right.
made it, that's why I
That's
wanted him to
right.
talk to Mike Gaines and talk to some other people.
Right.
Wigan Pin, the owner of Wigan Pin, loves Steve.
Oh, yeah?
Oh yeah, he went down there and got their side of the thing too.
Good.
So it's going to be a very balanced story, but that's what you would expect from the LA Times.
Well, we'll look forward to that and appreciate you sharing that with us. What we'd like you to share with us now is your observations from spring practice, from the spring game. You were there.
I was there.
Earl, you were there. Bud,
Surely.
you were there.
I think things look better. Things look like they're moving more smoothly. They seem more in offense. They seem more energized. But I find myself saying that every spring, too. You got to make sure you don't get carried away by the spring optimism, but I do sense a little difference just because we've got 6 new coaches in here over the last 2 years. That's brought a change.
What kind of changes did you observe from the coaches?
Bobby Kennedy's way more vocal and demonstrative than Eric Campbell. Eric Campbell, even when I interviewed him, I can barely hear him speak. Bobby
Really?
Kennedy is way more in your face, way more animated, way more patting him on the butt, getting him going. Jim Reed is your old East Coast.
So Bobby Kennedy's
He's the
receivers coach.
Jim Reed's coaching middle linebackers.
Okay.
And he's very animated, very funny, sense of humor. And then Chris White's the running back special teams coach. He's more laid back, but you can see they're different than their previous people. But in fairness to those previous coaches, I thought Lester Erb and Darrell Wilson did a good job in there. Lester Erb recruited Chicago as well as anybody.
Oh.
I mean, everyone's assuming that Brian Ferentz and Jim Reed will be able to hit Chicago as good as Lester, but he got Jaleel Johnson, Faith Akakady, Ryan Ward. I mean, he recruited very well in Chicago, so I think he'll be missed somewhat, but I like the changes overall. I think it's just kind of breathed some new life into the program.
And it needed it.
And it did need it.
Yeah, it needed it. So the spring game, which we haven't had for a long time.
2004.
Yeah, and there was actually a bit of a game.
I think Kirk is reaching out to the public, and I think he's being more accessible. He just did a TV show for an hour the other night.
Really?
Yeah.
On
Yeah,
Nine.
I
He was on
watched
there.
that, yeah.
He was on there for the full hour with the guys from the Gazette.
It was well done.
Really?
It was well, and
Oh,
they
I
did.
thought it was.
And in fairness, especially Mike Halas, he asked him a couple hard questions. He's like, "You've had onside kicks that you've been burned."
He
He asked
always
about
does.
being burned on onside kicks for the last 3 years, and then he asked me, he goes, "Why are you here today? What's going on?" And Kirk said they're trying to reach out. I think they realize coming off a 4-8 season, ticket prices increasing, more to do.
There you go.
You can't just assume that everyone's going to be like you guys that are just show up.
Yeah.
You have to sell yourself, and I think that's what
But on this ball game, wasn't he forced into that
the
by the Big Ten Network?
what.
That's what I wondered. The
The-
spring,
The spring game will be there
Game they
forever because
played.
the Big Ten
So they can
Network.
tape it?
right?
Yeah, and you
I mean,
have
we haven't
one
had
on
anyone
their
to say
schedule.
that on the record, but that
No,
I think
but
common
I-
sense tells you that
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
hey,
Seen every one of them.
we can't get anyone to watch if it's just your open practice. Nobody cares. And I think it's better. I think this thing.
Oh,
is
I do
better.
too.
I think you learn a little bit more, and I just think it's a good way to send off spring football.
Well, I haven't seen any of it. I had to go to the daddy-daughter Girl Scout dancing time as the spring games.
Well, I watched
nothing.
every
The
time.
Big Ten Network
They
will probably
don't-
show
It was on last night late, but I had to go to bed. It
I'm
was
sure
like
they'll show it
11
at least a
o'clock.
couple more
But you
times.
have to go by their schedule.
Right,
You have to do it.
right.
Actually, our practice should have been over the week before.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah,
But that was the Big Ten Network, you think?
that's right.
Yeah.
And it's good exposure. I mean,
But I like that
It
too.
is.
They play the
I
whole
get to see
practice.
all the other teams play.
Right.
In that
And I've
series.
noticed this year that a lot of the other Big Ten schools are doing interactive, more fan interactive
Yes,
things.
yes.
Gosh, there was something that just came across the computer yesterday, and I thought, they really did that? And I can't remember what it was now. But they get fans involved. Do they let fans kick a field goal
I
or
think
something?
I've seen that. I think
Yeah.
There's
I did,
something
yeah.
going on. You know, Brutus, the
It's more
Buckeye,
money for them, too.
was
social media.
Yeah,
It's all.
Yeah.
It's all
It's
part
money
of.
for them too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Listen,
and,
I loved it when Hayden had his spring games, and it was
Oh, I did too.
the only thing he wouldn't let him do is
the
return
quarterback. And
punts.
hit the quarterback.
Well, yeah, of course. But I still remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Tim Dwight dropping back to return
Oh,
a
I
punt.
do. I do.
And if he caught it on the fly, he couldn't run with it. But he let it drop, and then he caught it and took off running with it. And the crowd went nuts. It was great. I can still see it. He would just stand under there. At the last second, he stepped back, let it drop, grab the ball, boom.
I do
Tim
remember.
Dwight outcoached them all.
He did.
He made his own rules.
So, tell us a little bit more about the spring practice season. You didn't get to go observe practice.
We saw two practices.
You did.
Saw the one in West Des Moines and this one.
Oh,
And
that's
the spring.
right.
And
That's
then
right.
I saw enough to where I can't tell the three quarterbacks apart.
That was one of my questions.
Just when I think I'm ready to say that's the best one, he either struggles or one of the other two does something better. I still think in the long run the freshman's going to be the starter. Not maybe before it's all Beathard. I still think she's got the
Really?
best combination of run, pass, moxie, pocket presence, but I don't think he's anywhere near ready to start yet.
And that would fit, that style of quarterback would fit the offensive coordinator Davis's
I think
system.
Sokol and Beathard are by far the best runners. Rudock doesn't have a lot of scrambling ability. He's kind of like Vandenberg in that regard. Sokol's big. Sokol probably outweighs Beathard by 30 pounds, and he's
Really?
the same height. What I like about Beathard, I don't know, he had a nice run the other day, and they called it an explosive play, which gave them 2 points. He scrambled out of the pocket and showed some really good speed, and I just think he's got the most upside. I could be wrong, but that's who I think before he's done, he'll be their starting quarterback.
Well, if I read your description of the spring game correctly, if I remember it correctly, the wide receivers
Caught
kinda
everything
jumped
thrown to
out.
him. Didn't gain a lot of yards after the catch, which I still think is going to be a problem. But last year, they had trouble even catching the ball.
Right.
The guys, I mean, Riley McCarron did not play Saturday because of a hamstring. He's going to be in there. I think Blake Haluska showed that
How about that, Blake Haluska?
He's a 6'4", 210-pound kid with good
Is he a walk-on?
He's a walk-on, Adam's brother. If he can give them I mean, remember Don Nordman?
Yeah.
They've had guys like that before, and they just kind of pop up. If he could come on this late in his career, kind of do like what a Ramon Ochoa did, I mean, that's what you need. And they caught everything thrown their way. Cameron Wilson caught 10 balls. He's a redshirt freshman from Ohio. About a 3-star. Wasn't a huge recruit, but you get guys out of Ohio, they're against good competition. And like I said, he caught everything thrown his way. I mean, they were just catching everything.
Well, and I think last year we would have won 2 or 3 more games if we'd caught the ball.
Just catch the
We
ball.
didn't catch the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Iowa State and Central Michigan games to me. I mean, they lose to Iowa State 9-6. You take those two back, then they're 6-6. Then it's at least a salvageable season.
Gut-wrenching
Those
is
were the
what
two
they
games
were,
that, to me,
yeah.
that just destroyed the season in a lot of ways.
Now, Central Michigan lineman was the #1 pick in the
And
NFL draft.
most of the tape they showed was his tape against Iowa.
Is that right?
I mean, I felt sorry for Albus and the guys he just completely owned them. But if you're going #1 in the draft, you should.
That's right.
And he was incredible. And he was a 2-star who weighed 240 pounds coming out of
Really?
Michigan. Or was it, I believe he was from Michigan, yeah.
Well, it said in the NFL reports that he is a beast.
Yes.
That
He
he's
is a
mean, has a nasty disposition.
There's still guys like that. And you
Kinda
I'm
Alex
surprised-
Karras-like.
I'm surprised Iowa didn't find him.
Right, I am too.
He's the kind of guy that Kirk recruits.
You bet.
But Central Michigan got him because my guess is Iowa didn't even know
Well, he
him.
won the game on us all.
But yeah, he
I
completely
mean, he looked
owned,
like a beast out
he owned the
there.
left side of the line of
That's
scrimmage. They
right.
couldn't do anything against him.
Well, speaking of recruiting, you've been paying attention. In fact, today in the Press Citizen, you had a nice article on both football and basketball recruiting. Thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about where the Hawkeyes stand with ball first.
Football, they have 3 commitments, all from in-state from the junior class.
Verbal commitments, of
Ross
course.
Persbacher, who's going to probably be as good as any offensive lineman in the country.
Do you think
before-
we're going to keep him?
Yeah, the only way I don't see him coming to Iowa is if they go like 2-10, and it just gets so ugly around here to where he's thinking, "Wow, Kirk may not be here in another year." I just don't think that's going. I
Right
don't think
now-
it's going to get that bad.
Piersbacher's getting full ride scholarship offers from
Well, Alabama
everyone.
and USC and Auburn are the last 3. He'll have 80 offers before it's done. He'll be one of the top 5 or 6 offensive tackles in the country. I mean, everyone's made all this big attention about Orlando Brown, the big guy who just eliminated Iowa. His father, Kirk, coached in the NFL.
Right.
Persbacher's ranked way ahead of this kid. That kid's more of a project, but Persbacher has got a great. I've seen him play. Fundamentally sound. He's big. He's tough. He's in great shape. I know some Iowa fans are getting tired of him tweeting his offers, but my response to that is let him be a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Let him have fun.
He's a junior in high
He's a
school.
junior but maybe some of those people on Twitter getting at him are junior too. That's what you don't know about Twitter.
True.
You don't know the ages of the people, but let the kid have fun.
Have you met him?
I've met him one time.
Yeah?
I met him when he was taking his pads off to do a radio show up at the state tournament. Seemed like a good kid.
And speaking of that, was he involved in track at all?
That I don't know. I don't know about that.
I wonder if he's a discus or.
But he is as fundamentally sound as an offensive lineman as I've seen.
Really?
And he's definitely 6'4" and 280. He is big.
What's Kirk got to do to keep him?
Just
Win?
Win. Just win and just be Kirk. Kirk and Brian are the reason he's here, along with love of Iowa football. But he loves Iowa football when they're going 8-4 and stuff. I mean, I don't think it's asking too much for a kid to just say, avoid having another terrible season.
No, it's not.
And I think Kirk would be the first one to tell you that, too. That's what they have to do. They just can't go 2-10 and 0-8 in the Big Ten and have it get really ugly. And then if you got Alabama and that offering you, he may see himself leaving. But I don't think it's going to happen.
So we got Piersbacher.
Then you got Jay Shield, who to me is probably the most intriguing of the 3. The other in-state kid ran an offensive lineman from Dubuque Senior. Jay Shield is a quarterback from Union High School in LaPorte City, dual threat.
Up by Waterloo.
Up by Waterloo. Iowa's told him they'll give him a chance at quarterback, but I think they still think he's more of a receiver because I still think Iowa's reluctant to go the way of the dual threat quarterback if he's a better runner than he is thrower. I think right now Shields a better runner than he is thrower, but I've seen him on tape, and I'm not comparing him to Ronnie Harmon, but that's how he runs. It's like he's got eyes in the back of his head. He'll be running, and boom, he'll stop, and 3 guys will go right by him, and he'll juke, and he'll run to game 10. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Was the most exciting running back I've seen here.
Well, he's still the best. Hayden's, every time I ask Hayden, I'd ask him off the record, and he always would put Ronnie Harmon as the best player he coached at Iowa.
I say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep, best all-around player he
I
coached
can
at Iowa.
still see him just,
Oh, yeah.
he could fake anybody out of their boots.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine from high school. I don't know if you remember George Davis. He was a linebacker at Iowa.
Yeah.
He started for 3
Yeah.
years. He said the most frustrating thing was trying to get Harmon in open space, and
Gone.
he said he couldn't run. He goes, if I just get my arms around him and throw him down to the ground, but he goes, you can never get him. And he was good.
So that's
And
all
his
they've
brother
got.
wasn't all that bad.
His brother saved the '86
Yeah.
Holiday Bowl. They don't win that game if he doesn't return that kick to midfield.
I'm drawing a blank on his first name. Kevin Harmon. I can still see the two of them running around town together on their mopeds.
And their
Yeah,
coats. And
right,
Yeah.
I met him one time. I went to Drake at the time, and I came up a couple times to. I met Ronnie one time, and he had more jewelry on his neck than I had seen in my entire life. And I just remember thinking, wow. I mean, I remember thinking, how could he hold his neck up? He had so much gold chain. And my friend George, he wasn't like that. It was kind of new to us. But boy, I mean, Ronnie was the best football player I've seen at Iowa.
Is it Eddie Phillips?
He was good too.
He was
Number 22.
Yeah,
A little before my time.
He was here when I was a student.
He was from Chicago.
I'd never seen, and he was a nice kid. I'd never seen anybody like him in person. The way he could run with the football.
Yeah.
And then we saw Ronnie Harmon,
Yeah.
and I'd never seen anything like him.
Yeah, Ronnie was special.
Yeah, he really
He was Gale Sayers. He was Iowa's Gale Sayers. That's
You
kind of how I look.
know, you got to give a lot of credit to Bernie White.
Bernie White got him here.
Bernie White got him, but then Bernie White also got Ron Dane up at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's right.
Ron Dane would have been. Ron
That's
Dane
right.
probably would have been in Iowa.
That's
had that-
right.
Think
Had that
of
been
that.
10 years earlier.
Think
Yes.
of that.
Imagine Hayden with Ron Dane.
I was at senior day for Ron Dane up in Madison. You were probably at that game.
No, I was at the Icon Classic versus Connecticut.
Really?
Rob Howe actually covered. I was
That
at
was the
Madison.
same night?
Same day. Alford beating Connecticut as far as Iowa ran.
I got so sick of
That
hearing
was
the
sad.
name Ron Dane.
That was
That
sad.
was 4 years.
That was that '99 team.
But that
was
senior
just-
day, oh,
Yeah.
That was a bad Iowa team.
But we got him in the end.
yeah.
He got him in '96 too when
Yeah.
he was a freshman. I remember, and I was wrong about that. I picked Wisconsin to win that game, and I didn't think.
Well, he went down with an injury that game.
Well, Iowa beat on him.
That's
They
right.
pounded him. I remember a couple of those Iowa football players say to me afterwards, and I'm just saying, hey, if you can help motivate him, they beat him, I think, 31-0.
Yeah.
Just destroyed him that day. That would have been in '96, but that '96 team was one. Maybe other than the '02 team, the '96 team may have been the best team I've seen at Iowa.
Really?
I know they lost at Tulsa, which was ridiculous. They
But
should never have
wasn't it-
lost that.
That was a goofy
But that
Hayden's
team-
idea to fly down and back on the
That
same
team had,
day.
I believe, of their 22 starters, I think 17 of them played in the NFL.
Wow.
On that '96 team.
And Bernie was still here.
Bernie wasn't here in '96.
No.
Bernie left
No.
in.
He was already
90.
gone?
No, he was long gone. He left with McCarney in '90.
Oh,
Yeah, they joined. He left with McCarney when
that's
Barry
the
took over
timeline.
Wisconsin.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then that Wisconsin pipeline to New Jersey started. I mean, it went with Bernie. And now Bernie's back here because I always see him up at Hy-Vee.
Yeah,
Well, he's working over there.
Yeah, he coached my brother. He was my brother's position coach.
working at Hy-Vee.
Well, he's working for Kurt.
Oh.
Yeah, I see him over the football
Yeah.
complex. I've never really met him personally.
Yeah.
My brother said he was a
Character.
Well, that was one word he's used. But he said he would ride you. He was tough.
Yeah.
Tough love.
Huh?
But Bernie's really a nice guy.
He's a good recruiter too.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
did-
Earl went on recruiting trips with him.
yeah.
I mean, he brought in Andre Tippett, didn't he?
Yeah.
He laid.
But I
One of my
wouldn't-
best friends.
Yeah.
When he left, I wouldn't even talk to him.
Oh,
When he come back, he made sure I was going to talk to
Because didn't his wife work at Regina or something, or
is that right?
did he work at?
him. He worked there. He
Yeah,
was
he
a
was
coach
at
out
Regina.
there.
Yeah.
He's the one that took the state tournament.
I'm sure that was a tough move for him to have to.
Yeah.
I bet.
But it was turned out to be a pretty good professional move.
But he wanted back here so bad.
Oh, yes.
And he had a brother that
Yeah,
kept
he-
coming back
He
all the
told
time.
me he got, he didn't say, what's the guy's?
Bernie?
No, the,
Oh, Barry.
Barry,
Barry Alvarez.
yeah, he said Barry Alvarez announced that I was going to come back as a coach, and I couldn't.
Really?
Yes,
Barry wanted him.
yes.
Barry saw him as a big resource.
Barry,
Right.
Barry also wanted Steve Malcho when he took over.
He got him.
too. Yeah, he got him. Yeah, he wanted
Yeah.
Steve Malcho as his SID.
Yeah.
Barry wanted it his way, and now you know why.
He named his successor, too.
I don't live too far from where Barry lived in Iowa City, I've been told.
Really?
I guess he lived right off of Friendship and Willow, and right there by Muscatine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was invited by Barry when I had polio then again, And Barry found out about it, and he called me and said, "Why don't you be my guest for the Iowa game?"
Oh, up there at Madison?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's when that. Who was the guy that got the job?
The new
Brett Bielema.
Bielema.
Yeah. And I'm not too good at names anymore.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
We'll fill in the blanks for you.
hey,
Barry invited you up to his box to watch
Sure.
that Iowa game.
Barry had had a knee operation.
I remember that.
Yeah, and there was about 20 of us in this beautiful booth. It was a honey, and I was in the front row. And he said, Barry's on a swivel chair up about this much higher than I am.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey Murph." I said, "Yeah." And that's when we had two guys go down.
Who went down that game?
Oh,
I remember.
I can't.
What year was this?
The first year.
First year at Bielema?
Yeah,
That would have been 06.
yeah.
Not a good year for Iowa.
No.
And we had two guys go down in that early.
Oh, one was a wide receiver,
That's right.
and
I can't remember.
was it what's his name? It got in so much trouble later with Kirk.
Dominic Douglas?
No.
No. Anyhow, he said,
Got kicked off the team just before the bowl game with all the.
James Cleveland?
No, it was just more recently.
Yeah, I mean, they all blend together after a while.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, you had a lot of fun up there,
Oh, I did.
Earl. So, back to recruiting. Let's talk about basketball.
I just want to
Oh,
ask you one
please.
thing
Yeah.
in football.
What's
Yep.
that?
What do you think of the new division setup?
Yeah.
Thank God it's East and West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God we don't have to hear legend of the leaders anymore.
And thank God it's the natural
Yes,
geographic
geographic.
rivals.
I think it's,
It should have been that way to begin with.
I'd rather be in our division.
Oh, I much would rather be too. I mean,
Now, that's what I think. But by that time,
"Yeah, we eliminated
Wisconsin,
Ohio
most of-
State and
yeah.
Ohio State,
Michigan.
Penn State,
Well,
Michigan,
then,
Michigan State.
You know, even Maryland's had good football.
well, I'm just glad the Big Ten
Okay.
finally realizes that they can put Michigan and Ohio State in the same division, and
Right.
life goes on.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Life go-
right.
And
That's
everyone's
good.
That's
assuming
right.
that Michigan's back. Michigan went 8-5 last year.
Yeah.
They're not completely back yet. They're
No.
going to be. This guy's recruiting great. Ohio State, to me, is in a league by themselves this year. If they don't get their quarterback hurt, to me, they might be the best team in the country.
But don't you think the teams that they have over there
Oh,
now
much tougher for
will get
football.
into
Yeah.
Ohio State's territory?
Wow.
Yeah,
so-
not this year though. I'd be
no,
surprised
no.
if they lose a game this year. I think they've got
boy.
I think they got the Heisman winner. I'm not a fan of Urban Meyer. I think it's partly because I'm jealous of him. He's just got kind of life at the palm in his palm of his hand right now. He's my age and he's
Look at him.
I mean, look, he goes to jobs. He's kind of like Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
He goes to jobs that are ready to win and then he just wins. I mean, they went 12-0 last year. A year after going 6-6. I mean, that's got to be partly because of him.
It's a big part of him.
But yeah, that's going to be a tough game for Iowa. I mean, that Braxton Miller is. You don't get quarterbacks like that growing up in the state of Iowa very often. Whereas in Ohio, they knew they were going to get him.
Yeah.
He's probably my choice to win the Heisman this year over Johnny Football.
Well, Johnny Football's going to have to prove it all over again
And
with
teams
people
are going
gunning
to
for him.
teams are going to be gunning for him. They've lost
Johnny football.
the kid from Johnny Manziel from
Manziel,
Texas
the
A&M,
Heisman winner, the freshman.
the freshman Heisman winner.
Freshman Heisman winner. I really objected to that.
I did not vote for him, but
Who'd you vote for?
I ended up voting Tao, and I wished I wouldn't have. I got kind of.
That's who I was
I
pulling for.
kind of got swept away, not by the Notre Dame mystique, just by how well he was playing.
Yeah.
7 interceptions, they were undefeated, but then he just looked terrible.
Look how he did against USC, though.
He was great, but in the
It was-
championship game, he looked
Nope,
terrible.
he got manhandled.
He just got manhandled, missed tackles, and
Yeah.
I don't know if his mind was in it. I think he's a better football player than he showed.
I agree.
Once I was done, I wished I would have made a different choice.
If you had it to do over again, who would you have chosen?
I probably would have chosen because he won at Alabama, and they go 10-2.
Yeah.
I mean, they did. He won most of the big games, and he was. If you watch Texas A&M play, he was their offense.
He's exciting to
He was
watch.
part Drew Tate. He had so many different qualities as a quarterback. You just kept having to remind yourself that he was a redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
What did you like best about Drew Tate?
what I like about Drew Tate, just his competitiveness and the fact that he wasn't a dual threat quarterback, but he rarely got sacked. Yeah, it's like he had a lot of moxie and just he had a pocket sense to him that you can't coach that.
That was fun to watch, yeah.
But when they started losing, he could be he was not always fun to deal with from a media standpoint when they were losing.
Was it the Iowa State game when we lost and he threw his helmet down?
Well, the Ohio State, that was at Ohio State.
Oh, Ohio State.
And he was mad at Tony Moriarty for maybe the only time in Tony's career where he maybe missed a block.
Yeah.
Because Tony's still the greatest tight end blocker I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he'll play 10 years in the NFL against State.
Speaking of tight ends, C.J. Fedorowicz.
45 catches last year, but only one for a touchdown.
Yeah.
To me, the next step for C.J. is to learn how to gain yards after the catch. I thought he got brought down too easy by 1 and 2 defenders. When you're 260,
Yeah.
to me, you got to run over people. That's his next step.
And he's already a senior
He's
to
a
be.
senior to be. So's James Morris.
Yeah. Well, James.
When you don't redshirt, it happens fast.
Yeah.
James is part of.
James got hurt last.
James has been hurt a lot. He's
Yeah.
part of a linebacker crew that started games, but none of them have made first or second team All
No.
Big Ten. That's
Amazing stat.
That's the next challenge. One of those guys, to me, has to make All Big Ten if that defense is gonna play well.
What else
That's
does
where
the
a lot of your Iowa people.
What's that?
That's where a lot of your Iowa people are real good. But then they start meeting these guys from Chicago, and they get hurt easy.
Yeah, I thought James would come in and be a dominant force but I think I got carried away by what he did in high school. But he's
How
gonna
could
leave
you
here.
not?
He's gonna leave here being a 4-year star. Many people can say that. He's had injury problems. I just hope that he's got an All Big Ten season in him.
I do.
Because I think
Yeah,
he's bugged.
I do too.
When we talked to him a couple weeks ago, you could tell his legacy's not what he wants it right now. He knows he hasn't played very well individually. He's played okay. He's been average, but James has never been average in anything.
And nothing.
No.
I'm glad we got him back next year.
No.
Yeah, this is his last year. It's too
Yeah.
bad it'd be nice to have him back for 2 more years, but they needed him
Yeah.
as a freshman.
They had
What's he
to.
going into law?
He's talked about doing that, yeah, but I think he'd like to try to get football shot for his hand.
Why not?
No, I do too.
But I think he would eventually get into law, is what he said.
Do you think he ever wished that he had been a running back?
I've asked him that, and if he
Why?
does, he's not going to tell us that publicly.
I know.
Marv Cook still tells me to this
His
day.
grandpa.
Marv Cook still tells me to this day he
Grandpa's
thinks he would have been a
better.
great chain-moving running back. Just
Marv's
grind him
told
into
us the
that.
same thing.
Yep.
I mean, the guy in high school,
I think he
Was
could have been.
unstoppable.
To me, if Mark Wiseman could do it, James Morris
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
I think he's faster.
yeah,
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I think he's more athletic.
Yeah, but they like him at linebacker, and James seems to be content there. So hopefully he'll reach his potential.
Yeah.
Boy, I watched him run a long one back at Regina.
I used to feel sorry for some of the people
Yeah.
he had to play against in high school.
And it wasn't like he was that much bigger than all
No,
the
he was
other
100,
kids.
200. No, he was just
so sad to go to Seoul.
he was just so much more
Regina
physical.
for 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
And then it
come
kind
up-
of got that way though the next year after he left with the
Yeah.
kid from Regina. What was the big linebacker who ended up going? What was his name?
Reisner?
No.
No.
You know who I'm talking about. He
Yeah,
ended up
I know.
going to Northwest Missouri State, I
Yeah.
believe.
Oh.
He did the same thing. I was worried about. I mean, there was one game where Regina was playing Tipton. Tipton had a girl playing safety in the late in the fourth quarter, and one of these Regina receivers went to block her, and she fell and went into the fetal position on the field.
You're right there. The guys didn't want to tackle her.
Well, she didn't want to be hit either.
No,
She went and she got, and I just kept having to say to myself, "This is high school football," and it was.
Don't hit me, don't hit me.
I mean, there's a chance that girl could meet James Morris in open field
And die.
and that would not have been good. I don't know what. Luckily, James was out. James, I don't know if they played Tipton that year, but all the Regina starters were out by that time. But she was on the field and she stuck it out the whole year. I heard.
Wow.
But he was so good. There wasn't a team in the conference.
He was fast. He could cut on a dime.
What do you think of Marv Cook?
Great high school coach, great tight end. Everything he's done so far, and I've heard he's a good financial
What I
planner
really
too.
love-
Yeah.
Wish I had more money, some to invest. Everything Marv does is.
What I love is he's got young kids left out of school.
Yeah.
Well, what I like about Marv too is when you watch him during a game, you'd never know he was a head
That's right.
coach. You'd think that he was like
Right.
the assistant trainer. The way he Cook's kind of the same way.
That's right. He's
They just blend in. It's not about them. It's never about Marv.
Dumont's the bad guy.
Well, somebody has to be.
you can hear that when you go to the game.
But you need someone
hear
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
Jason knows his role, and the players know that. But Jason's been there and done it too. He was a scholarship. He didn't walk on at Iowa. He was
That's
a
right.
scholarship player.
That's right.
Defensive end. He was a big
He
kid.
played for Hayden.
Yeah, he played for Hayden.
Dumont even told Father Rudy, get behind that line there. What do you think that line's?
And Canellis gives him some tough love, too.
Canellis is
Yeah.
a whole different beast.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
He's turned their strength program, and it's amazing what he's done.
My boy has been working with him for 2 years.
And you're going to see it.
I do, right away. And he works with the girls, too, and he is great. Canellis is great with the kids out at the little kids, the boys and girls. He remembers my son's name.
That's a
when
key part of it.
We run into him here or there, and he'll look at him. He won't call him Keller. It's Killer. He
a
doesn't
big part
care
of
if my son's with his grandma or his teacher. Killer.
It'll be interesting to see how long they can keep him there.
I hope.
Well, I
Long
think to
time.
that last kid,
Yeah, because he's
You talking
gonna
about Marv or
Marv.
I'm
Alex?
talking more about Alex.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Alex will stay quiet. See, his
Wrestling coach.
mother
now.
coached out.
No, I just wonder what happens if some Division I school offers
Well,
him Chris Doyle's job or so. You know what I mean?
That's
Sooner or later, I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be a school that may offer him a job for $200,000 a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Because he's that good
well,
in that
he's
respect.
got a pretty good.
I've heard he's got a pretty good gig over at Regina too,
Yeah.
and he earns it. I mean, he does a good job.
And Marv
Works hard.
Marv knows who to get.
I remember-
Marv looks at that picture.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I remember
and
the first time I saw Alex Canellis was a sophomore at West High. He was making his varsity debut.
Didn't he have a mohawk, back
Mohawk,
then?
orange. Who is this kid? He dominated the game as a
Yeah.
sophomore, and then he turned out to be a great player. Unfortunately, concussions ended
Yeah.
his career.
Well, I
Prematurely.
can remember seeing him on the streets of Iowa City on this little tiny moped with that big orange mohawk.
Yeah. He was such a good athlete.
See, his mom and dad are just the
Great people.
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
I've met him a few times, and they seem very nice.
I work with his dad on advertising for the School
for
of
the College of
Dentistry.
Dentistry, right,
And his dad's a really nice guy. His dad's out there at every Regina
Oh, yeah.
game, at least home game.
Practices.
Yeah. He's
Alex,
a big
I
fan.
always describe. Alex is the kind of guy you want in your foxhole. That's how he and James Ferentz.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe James Ferentz too. If I had to walk down a dark alley, James Ferentz would have been the one player on that football team last year who I'd want, probably even over Brandon Scherf. I'd want James Ferentz because he just seems like
Well, you know, every high school we have in this city has fantastic football coaches
definitely.
Very
training.
fortunate.
in all this. I mean,
Yep.
you take that West highest looking
sorry.
weight room there is
Joe?
for a high school, you know.
You got it that way because you know
Yeah,
all
that's
the people
right.
in town are doing the same thing. You got to keep up.
Well, we're about out of time, believe it or
It's
not.
been fast.
Yeah. We got 3 minutes to just run down Hawkeye basketball recruiting.
Okay. Right now, they have no commitments in the junior class. They're in on a bunch of people. I mentioned 4 kids in that story from Chicago
Yes.
because they need to get back into Chicago. I think,
Yes.
Yes.
I think he's going to get somebody here in the next year.
5'7"
Tyler Eulis.
Tyler
They were
Eulis.
really high on him early, and I know they still have the problem with him. Is in the last week he's gotten offers from Florida State, Butler, and Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a lot of competition, but like Fran says, we got to go after players like that. And he's got momentum right now. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in this class.
Is there going to be time in a game for all these kids he's got on his roster next year?
I think I see it being a 9 to 10 man rotation.
Yeah.
I see maybe three or four players being disappointed, but that's part of it. He doesn't hurt anybody. You're either going to play or you're going to sit.
And they're going to have 4 seniors next
Four
year.
seniors, and the thing with Fran, doesn't hold grudges. He plays who's ever hot. He's not into, okay, this is my guy. I got who's ever going to help him win that game that night. That's who he goes with.
Well.
He does tough love, but then 2 seconds
I was
later,
a kid from Jefferson.
Utah?
I think he's going to be a very versatile inside-outside scorer for them. You're going to see a little bit of Ryan Bowen in him. You'll see a little bit of Jeff Settles in him. He can do a bunch of different things. He and Peter Jock will upgrade them, which is what
That's what they need.
That was their biggest weakness this year, shooting.
Well, we've been visiting with Pat Harty, the longtime writer and columnist for the Iowa City Press-Citizen. Pat can be heard on KCJJ Radio, 1630 a.m., the mighty 1630, every Saturday morning from 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. with John Feeney as
John
part
Feeney.
of the Sports Buddies. And Pat, we're grateful that you found time to
appreciate it.
join us
My
on the
pleasure.
show. And on behalf of Bud Supple and Earl Murphy, I'm Dirk Keller. You that Sports Opinion is on every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. But if you can't get it on cable TV, look below me right here. You can watch it on patv.tv. And you can always go to my Facebook page, and I'll have it up there too. I want to thank Joe Murphy for being so patient and kind with us. He's the guy that makes the show happen every week. We're on every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on Channel 18. On behalf of all these guys, I want to thank you for watching, and remember this: either you're a Hawk or you're not. Go Hawks!